Okay. Yeah, recording right now. Okay.
Okay, what's up, you guys? Oh, Aniket, thank you for turning your camera on. But what's up? This is ACM's first general meeting of our winter quarter. Yeah, let's get started. Can you go to the next slide? David, go to the next slide. He's in the same room as me. We're in the club room, by the way. But yeah, for week 2, we have a couple of things going on. We had our intro to Python yesterday, hosted by Zubair. Zubair did that. And we also have this general meeting, so that's today, for the pathways in CS, which we're going to swiftly get into. And on Friday, we have a social with food at the club room from 4 to 5. And then the week after that, David, thank you. I don't know if we have a LeetCode weekly session going on Monday, but we definitely do have another data science workshop on data cleaning on next Monday, and another workshop series, which is going to be like a project series hosted by a couple of fellow ACM members for a Discord bot workshop, which is going over Golang. Crazy. I know Anthony loves that Golang stuff. Yeah, he immediately looked at me. And then another on Friday, we're gonna do the same thing on social. And I think Samarth has a couple of announcements. So Samarth, you wanna go for it?
Oh yeah, hey guys. As Vinz said, sorry, I'm like walking somewhere, but as Vinz said, we're gonna have a social Fridays, and we're gonna have food. We're gonna have pizza and stuff. But we're still deciding if it's gonna be bi-weekly or weekly. But please come. It's between 4 to 5 on Fridays. And it's a really great way to socialize and get to know more ACM people, which is really important because general elections are coming up. It's the best way to kind of socialize, to get a spot on the board potentially just by knowing people and learning, the framework and the hierarchy of ACM. Please come to the social, you'll be able to meet all of us on the board and just have a good time. Thank you.
Yep. Next slide. Club room, yeah. Next slide. We already know about the club room. Here's the big thing right now. We have our general elections coming up, and so this is just what you're gonna be seeing next week. Please don't fill this out. This is just like an info of what you should be preparing for and what type of board positions there are if you actually want to get on board. But yeah, there's that QR code you can get sent to the Google form that you'll be filling out 2 weeks from now if you want to be on board. But this is just like the formal announcement that is happening. Next slide. Open board meetings. We have open board meetings so you can see what the inner working, the sausage making of ACM is, and try to get a taste of that and see if you actually want to be on board or not. And it's going to be on Discord on Saturday, 12 to 1. And because of Rose Hack, we didn't have one, but next one we will. Next Saturday we will. And yeah, so this is the Pathways in CS panel. Kind of treat it like a alumni panel, pretty much, because we have so many beautiful alumni here. And also one UCI alumni, which is represent. But yeah, we have this panel is usually here to try to give us a better idea of what we could do with our degree, because I know that's very overwhelming. There's a bunch of people here that have experienced things that we probably wouldn't have never thought was possible with our degree. And so we're just here to try to ignite that passion for different disciplines in CS. And so without further ado, we can switch over to the next slide, and I will try my best to introduce everybody because I did a little bit of digging. So you don't have to introduce yourself. I will try my hardest based off of my LinkedIn perusing. And then after you say your name, or after I try to describe you as perfectly as possible, you can say your introduction and say what's up to everybody. So first off, we have someone who graduated from the class of 2022. He is the former president of Cyber. He was my SI leader, and he's currently a software dev for Amazon Lab 126 that deals with Amazon's hardware devices. We have Mr. Anthony Hallak. This is like all the applause. Woo! Yeah. Anthony, say hi.
What's up, everybody?
Okay. Very, very nice. And then we also have graduate of the class of 2017, I believe, a former board member of ACM and the director of Citrus Hack, and he's the current DevOps engineer for Zoom. We have Mr. Calvin Kwan. I think you're muted, Calvin. Did you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Yes. Hi, guys.
Hello, thank you for coming. And so for next, we have someone who graduated in class of 2021 as well. I like saying this because I spotted on his LinkedIn because it holds somewhere close to my heart, an IB diploma graduate. And he's also a former, he's a former ACM member and a former NASA intern. He's a current Google software engineer, Mr. Timothy Koo.
Hello, thank you for having me.
We had Luca just pop in, your mentee. Thank you for coming. And then we also have someone graduated from the class of 2021, a former Amazon intern, and also intern at the city of Moreno Valley. Very cool. And the current software engineer, Mr. Inderpreet Laly.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah. And then we also have someone from the class of 2019, the former VP of both Cyber and ACM, another IB graduate, let's go, a former senior security engineer at Cloudflare, also a current senior security engineer at Brex, Mr. Daniel Stinson.
Hey all, thanks for having me here. Glad to be back.
Yeah, thank you. And now we also have the co-founder of Wink, the author of From Social Networks to Smartphones, Modeling and Understanding Online Human Behavior, and a current senior data science consultant at Duke Energy Corporation, Dr. Pravallika Devineni. Did I say that correctly?
Just call me Pravi.
Pravi.
Yes, Pravi.
Yeah. Thank you for coming back. I know we had you last year too, so thank you. And last but not least, we have someone who graduated from UCI. You know, we love to give the love to other UC systems. He's the author of Polygonal Iteration Space Partitioning using the polyhedral model and a multiple compiler approach for improved performance and efficiency. And he's a current deep learning library engineer at NVIDIA, Dr. Aniket Shivam.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And so that was a lot of introductions. I hope everybody got a good idea of who's our panelists for today. And pretty much how this is going to work is we're going to go through a couple of introduction questions just to get a feel for everybody. But the real meat and potatoes is going to be in breakout rooms, where all the breakout rooms right now are labeled with each and everybody's disciplines and also the people that are going to be leading it. And so I feel like that's going to be the best place to actually figure out and start drilling into these individual disciplines. But feel free to float around and go to different breakout rooms, except for the people who are leading the breakout rooms. Please do not just go around. But yeah, we'll start it off with a couple of questions for everybody on the panel. Really quickly, how would you describe what you do to a non-CS person? And just suppose that with how do you describe what you do to a non-CS person? So you kind of get both sides of what you kind of your field. We can start off with Anthony.
Cool. All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So I would describe my job to a non-CS person. I have to steal from a senior engineer who said this. We write the software to make sure the hardware works. So I thought that was a very good quote. As for describing it to a CS person, I would say I work on Echo BSP board support package. So when you press the on button, everything from power on to OS. So kernel, bootloader, device drivers, all that stuff is handled by the BSP team. Yeah, I think that's good for technicalities. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And we could go from left to right on the picture there too. Calvin, you can go next.
Okay. So how would I describe to a non-CS person what I do is basically, you know, as DevOps, you're doing developer and operations. Basically, the whole idea is to keep everything running reliably, keep the lights on. And to be more specific, you know, DevOps and site reliability engineer, basically they're all in a way interchangeable. So the way I like to think of it is that, we're building the infrastructure of the servers, the cloud automation, the cloud infrastructure in order for the code that's built by the developers to get to the customers.
Very nice. And Timothy?
Let's see. In a non-technical way, I would tell someone I write a little bit of code, a lot of tests, and I go into a lot of meetings. In the technical sense, I guess it's not too different. I would say the same thing. I work on mostly back-end, a little front-end work, writing in Java, mostly working with just moving a lot of data around, but also, again, just going to a lot of meetings, talking to a lot of people, and working with a lot of people to make things happen.
Yeah, very nice. And Inderpreet?
Yeah, so for Northrop, to explain it to a non-technical person, I basically like work through a computer to make advanced like planes and stuff. So I use it, yeah, do that. And then I can't explain much because it's like a lot of like government stuff. So I bridge two programs together to help vehicles and airplanes, I would say. So bridging programs together, like software and stuff. So.
Very nice. And Daniel?
So in a non-technical sense, I would explain to my grandparents that I stop hackers, but in a more technical sense to people, I'm on a defensive security team at internal tech companies, and we collect audit logs from folks' laptops, cloud service providers like GCP and AWS, and then we monitor those for things that attackers would do and try to detect and stop the breaches before your data gets stolen. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, very nice. And Pravi?
So I work for a utilities company in the East Coast, which is compared to the electricities of the Pacific Electric, just like that. So for a non-technical person, I would say I basically make sure that the trees are cut down on time and hazardous trees are taken out. So there are no outages, electric outages, and basically making sure that there are no big wildfires like we've seen so far. So that's one of my main, that's what I lead. I lead a vegetation management team at Duke that makes sure we use, and for a technical person, we use historical data to make sure how do we optimize, for given a set of money, how do I optimize that set of money to get the best bang for your buck? Making sure things are optimized in a way that meets both customer needs, reduces outages, and makes sure safety standards are being met.
Very nice, very nice. And then finally, Aniket?
Yeah, so to a non-technical person, I would say I work on making AI run faster. But to a technical person, it would be I work on basically optimizing deep learning functions in a sense. So since I work at NVIDIA, we work on accelerating all the kernels that are used in deep learning for our own architecture, basically.
Very nice, very nice. Definitely like a good variety of things that we're going over here. And like, I know from like an undergraduate, just like me personally, it feels like grabbing the first building blocks of, CS, which are like for loops, your conditions, and then bring it all the way up to, like cybersecurity or like deep learning. Yeah, like it's crazy how those fundamentals right now like are bringing us to places like, wherever you guys are. And so for my next question, I'd like to ask everybody, what's the best part about what you do, and also the worst part? Because there's always the worst that comes with the best, and you like every position has like this one thing that they just hate doing. And I have a feeling that Timothy's might just be meetings, but we can go to start with Anthony.
Yeah, so I think favorite thing about working on it is I just get to learn so much because I've never done like embedded stuff before. So it's really cool, sort of peek behind the curtain, if you will, and see how all these devices get made and stuff. So I think that's really cool. As for what I don't like, I don't know. I'm a big like nerd and like gung ho about work. So I honestly really enjoy my work. So far, there's nothing I would say is like sticks out as like a negative. But yeah, I really, really like it so far. Yeah.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Always optimistic, Anthony. I love it. Yeah. Calvin.
I think the thing I like the most is being able to build out, the infrastructure. The things I work on, the code I deploy. We basically cover the entire globe for the clusters and the instances that we deploy. I think the thing I might not like maybe is the fact that since my role in DevOps, there's always on call. But most of the time you're like the first line of defense when something goes wrong. So depending on the on-call policy of your company, sometimes they make you wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes you just gotta drop what you're doing and handle an issue. Luckily I'm not one of those, but I know there are some positions that do require that.
Yeah, there's like the server is down. Okay, for me, I don't know what to do. Like, what are you supposed to do? You gotta teleport over there quick. Then Timothy.
I think the favorite part of my job is that I get free food. That's nice. But besides that, like in terms of the work itself, I really enjoy just working with some of the brightest people, in the industry, and not just that, but people who are like really kind and more than willing to kind of help each other out. One thing I don't like about my job is, or I don't know if I don't like this, but I guess it's not the most fun thing in the world, is I might spend like half an hour working on some functionality or some feature, and then I'll spend like 5 times that time writing tests for it. So that's always just part of the process.
You telling me you don't test driven development? You don't write your tests and then make the code that works?
No, that's I'm surprised. It's glad to hear you guys are being taught the right stuff. But, sometimes the theory doesn't always match up to the practice. But yeah, that's good. You should write your test first before you write your features.
Yeah, the 100. It'll stick with me 100%. Inderpreet.
My favorite thing, like going off what Timothy said as well, having like good coworkers and a good team makes the job really enjoyable. Like luckily for me, when I went in, majority of all like my coworkers were my age. That was like the one thing I was worried about, is if like I was gonna be around like a bunch of like parents, I guess, like older people who have kids. So it's hard to but majority, like I would say, is like fresh out of college or like 2-3 years out of college. So we all relate, we all like get along, and like they're really like encouraging. They're not type to like look at you weird if you ask a question or are confused about something. So they're really supportive with that. That was like another fear I had, but that's like the good thing. And the bad thing about my work, I would say, is I can't talk about anything I do. So it's like private information. So yeah, so I can't really like vent to anyone about like stuff that happens at work. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, if you guys are, having a good like rapport already, you can vent to each other, right? Exactly. And then Daniel.
Yeah, I think one of the best things for work for me is when you can actually like track down someone who does like the cybercrime that you're trying to stop at your company, and kind of reverse engineer the malware and point to, say, that's this beat up person who lives in like their mom's house in North Carolina, and report them to the FBI, and then you see the indictment come through, which is like a pretty fun true story that you can kind of like take the investigation all the way to that. But then like the downsides are just kind of like what Calvin mentioned, is like you don't get to choose when these security incidents or anything happens, and you get paged and have to work at like any time. Especially hackers like to hack on holidays. So it's a lot of holiday work.
Definitely. Yeah. And then Pravi.
Right. So like I said earlier, I work for a utilities company, which was established, I think, early 1900s. So it's like over 100 years old. So a lot of the grid modernization effort, all the digital effort is going on now for the company where they're establishing a lot of systems. So one of my favorite things about the job is, of course, the people I work with are pretty fantastic, who know that their field very well. So and unlike a lot of people on this panel today, I have like a business who does the business or understands all the strategy, and then there is like IT folks like data science, IT, software engineers, a lot of the fields that support the business which is utilities. So my favorite part is the work I do is directly affecting people on the field who are going, the crews that go down and cut trees. When there's a hurricane, our work will be directly applicable to identify and predict the vulnerable areas and send crews there. So it's directly applicable and I get to see what's happening there and how we can change up strategies and how we can add more engineering into the effort. My least favorite part is actually like having to convince people, because data science, while it's also like you're doing the technical work, but it's also science. How are you communicating the results to people, like convincing a fifth grader? Think about it. When people are not necessarily technically curious, how do you get through to them? So that's it can be very hard because half the people can understand it, but you really have to take the time to help people understand what the data product that you bring to the table and how it's going to help them. It's challenging it's challenging, but it's fun when they understand.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, look at the numbers. It literally is all the numbers. This is the graph. And then like, I can't see. I don't know what I'm looking at. I definitely get that.
This way, there are people who believe too much in the idea of IT, or people who are skeptics. Like there's like not a lot of people with middle ground in it.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, Aniket.
So I'll say the exciting part is the code we write is sometimes around supercomputers and stuff, which sounds cool to me. So it's good to see your code being run at, big places, big computers and stuff, and doing something useful. And then the bad part is probably, especially in systems, it's trying to figure out issues or like debugging and stuff. That becomes really challenging and tedious when it comes to systems, especially when we are too close to the architecture. So yeah, that's the bad part. It's time consuming, tedious, but probably worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I wouldn't even imagine like trying to find a bug that's running on a supercomputer. Like it probably scales the bug like tenfold just because it's running on like such powerful hardware. But yeah, I only have 2 more questions left before we break out into breakout rooms. Next question is, what is the biggest misconception about what you're doing, like your specific role? Like, what do people get wrong like every single time that they like say like, oh, you're a software engineer, you're DevOps, like you do this, right? And then you're just like, no, that's not me. Or even like us, like as undergraduates, what do we get wrong about what you do right now? So let's start off with Anthony.
Yeah, so I think the first thing when I say like embedded systems, BSP team, people think like, oh, like assembly. It's like right above assembly level is like the first misconception. The second thing is it's not always writing code. The first few months of when I got hired, I was actually on call, legacy on call. So the job's not just making new things, but also supporting all the products we've made before, right? So if things are reported from the field, or someone pushed a new code change to like an older product, sort of just going through like the legacy side of things, right? So it's also supporting what we've already done in the past, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, that's like the common misconception. It's not just writing code. Yeah.
Definitely. Calvin?
I think a lot of people, when they hear DevOps, they think of CI/CD. CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous deployment. And they think that you're just like building pipelines, and when you click run, you're just like a button pusher. It can be at that step if you're kind of like very intermediate in your career, or the company that you work at is not too technical. But when you dive very deep into working with infrastructure, there may be not like like a ton of coding involved, but you really need to understand like system design. You need to understand like infrastructure and like, you know, how to patch certain, you know, Linux kernels and stuff like that. Like it can get very, very technical for my kind of role. So even though you're not making features all the time, just knowing what to do and understanding, you know, your entire configuration, that's very important. That's not really understood too often.
Yeah, definitely. It's a more encompassing role than just like that specific, you know,
Exactly.
like part in it. Definitely.
Mhm.
And Timothy?
I'm not sure if this is like maybe a misconception, but maybe something I myself didn't expect, like when I was an undergrad. Now that I'm, you know, actually working, is, you know, there's a lot more, kind of what I mentioned before, there are a lot more like tests that you have to write than you might think. And, you know, you think like, yeah, you're a software developer, you're always creating new software, you know, adding new features all the time. But that's not always the case. Sometimes, yeah, you do have to do a lot of the, I guess, I don't want to say like the safety net stuff, the grunt work, but it's kind of the things that are necessary for, you know, to make sure your software works. And something else, I guess, is, you know, you actually have to collaborate with people a lot more than what you might think, right? Because it definitely does take more than one person when you're working on products that are serving millions, if not billions of people, right? And if you want to get, you know, your software out quickly, you have to work with, you know, other people, and yeah, there's a lot of collaboration. So
Yeah, definitely.
that's my 2 piece.
Yeah, hopefully that senior project gets you those collaborations, you guys, for for when you're a senior. Inderpreet?
I think one of the misconceptions is like the whole stereotypical like, oh, you code all day or whatever, but like majority of the time I think a lot of people forget about like documentation is pretty important. You kind of have to understand like how the program works for you to even input anything into the program. So I think that's one misconception is like there's a long process of documentation and trying to understand and making sure you take notes on how you're going to approach in planning as a whole. Yeah, you're not just going in there going into these like scrum meetings and then just listening and be like, okay, I got it. But it's like you have to kind of go in there, take your time, document a lot of stuff, take notes, and then slowly start, you know, like actually coding instead of just going into it without even like having any plan or goal in mind.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like even with a bunch of like personal projects that most of us do, it feels like a sprint where you're just like, but then like usually if you want, that's like a good way to like get tired. But if you want something that's just like sustainable, maintainable, scalable, then you gotta treat it like a cross country race, and you gotta do all the like little things like, oh, I made this button blue because it contrasts or something like that. But yeah, I definitely get that. Daniel?
Yeah, I would say it's the fact that you think you might be doing like your focus area or your specialty most of the time, but realistically, you're going to have to be very like cross stack across like software development, security, DevOps, no matter what kind of data science or engineering. Like you're going to have to be able to do all of them. Otherwise, like you're not going to like get things done across projects, and all of that requires like really good communication as you do all these different disciplines to kind of get all the stuff done. So the more breadth you have across all the different like experiences and like work areas, you're going to do much better throughout your career.
Yeah, definitely. Like people got to pick up everything. Like you guys got to pick up everything, or else you gotta or pick up everything or learn quick. That sort of thing. Pravi?
Right. So one of the things is I spend a lot more time learning and understanding the problem and making sure that we have the data and defining the problem more than I spend actually solving it. So making sure that the problem is well defined, it's worth solving, it really gives a value, it adds value, basically like what has been done manually, being able to use historical anything to make sure that we are able to make it or automate it in the future. I spend a lot more time actually making sure that the problem is the right problem to be solved, and we have the amount of data, making sure the data assumptions are all correct before solving the problem. And just like Daniel said, one of the things is there's a lot more soft skills that are involved. You got to speak to a lot of people. You have to explain, like people care less about the technical details and people care about what am I getting out of this? What am I getting by basically sitting here? So what value am I getting by investing in this project? So all the projects I work on, like $15, $20 million projects that go for a year and a half for full production. So a lot of them, that the one I'm leading now, it's a $20 million project where I'm leading the whole data analytics component of it. Here, making sure that, hey, this is a very data intensive code. So I make sure that it's very well defined before we go into that. So that's something people think, yeah, when you interview, you're asked a lot whether you know Python, whether you know all the data science algorithms, whether you know SQL code, whether you know write SQL code. So these are all the data science things, but you really need to know how to understand the problem as you go further in your career.
I definitely feel like empathy, like being empathetic, being empath to other people that have like these problems.
You should be able to listen and mirror other persons and make sure that the language they are speaking and the language you are speaking is the same page, basically. Over and over.
Aniket?
One thing I feel like people, at least at school, whenever I was TAing for like computer architecture or compiler classes, people felt like, why do we need to do this? You know, architecture, it's been same forever. But one thing I learned is like, there's always so much going on that we never really come to learn about. And the amount of details involved are just mind-blowing almost. And it's small things that you would think are pretty obvious, but once you start digging deep into it, it just gets complex and complex. So yeah, that's one of the things that if you look at very high level, it seems simple, but as you dig deep, it just gets complex.
Yeah, definitely, like the circle of knowledge definitely grows. Like even for me, when I'm barely on like an operating systems class, and I'm like, oh, there's stuff that that you have to do to make whatever you're making work. Like what? There's two pros. Like yeah, but definitely there's huge knowledge that you don't even know about. And so my last question before we go and break out into our breakout rooms is, if you could switch roles with somebody on the panel, who would it be? Anthony, you want to go first?
Daniel, you already know I'm trying to come for your job, bro. Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah. Probably, if I could do some security things, that'd probably be like the direction if I were to switch anywhere. Yeah.
And Calvin?
I don't really have desire to switch. I like where I'm at, and I plan on staying.
Very nice. And Timothy?
I mean, I like my job too, but if I had to, switch with someone here, I mean, what Daniel does sounds pretty cool. So I don't know if I'd actually want to do the work he does, but the impact that he has sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, finding those basement dwellers. We got to find all of them. Inderpreet.
I'd probably switch with, if I had to, I'd probably switch with Timothy because he gets free food, like lunch and stuff. Like a good perk to have. I love food, so yeah.
Very nice. Daniel, everyone's coming for your job. Who are you taking though?
I was definitely going for NVIDIA. Who doesn't want that? GPU, Bitcoin mining, all the things. That's free money.
On a supercomputer too. Oh my gosh. Probably NVIDIA.
I mean, I have a lot of friends in there, and like Aniket was talking about libraries, so that's probably where it would be.
And finally, Aniket.
I'll just go sideways into embedded systems, I guess. That's it's similar. I won't have to learn much.
Yeah, very nice.
Sideways
well, thank
movement.
You. Yeah, pretty. You can grab the supercomputer and just put it in Amazon Alexa. I feel like that's how like a Space Odyssey starts, right?
Yeah, the concepts are pretty similar. It's just the scale is very different.
Yeah, very nice. But thank you guys so much for answering my questions. But I know everybody has a lot of questions of their own, and this is probably going to be the time where we dig deep, way deep into whatever you guys do on like a day-to-day and what you guys really want to tell these people. But can we open breakout rooms? David.
Yep,
David.
opening them. Yeah, I'm opening them now. Okay.
I'm sorry, there's some lag. I can't hear.
Yeah, just make sure all officers make sure to record your sessions and yeah, pretty much it. Yeah, opening them now. Let's go. And I've kind of assigned all the breakout rooms by like pathway and name. So yeah. Okay. You guys see it?
No.
No. Let me check. That is so weird. How am I supposed to? Okay.
We have someone on Zoom on call.
I was gonna say we have a Zoom engineer here. It should be doable.
Yeah, it should be doable.
Oh yeah. Calvin, can you tell me what to do?
You know, I've actually never even used breakout rooms before.
Oh
My first time.
Mostly Teams people, so I don't know.
Okay. Oh. Just give me a sec. I'll figure.